from around the world, welcome to All for United. We're so delighted to welcome you here this evening for this very interesting chat. This is, of course, the All for United podcast, and please give off your information, all of your thoughts and everything as we go along in the comments. But I am over the moon to welcome. I just realized that you guys could easily be, I was going to compliment you, Barry, and say father and son, but I'm going to say great-grandfather and great-grandson. The absolutely wonderful and incredibly and good-humoured Barry, who's below me, and to the left of me, the incredibly wonderful and wise for his age, James. How are we getting on, lads?
Very, very good, and I'd be very proud to have James as a grandson, I can tell you.
Well, you're going to make him weep. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining us here tonight, guys. I am really looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have this evening about, well, first of all, we're going to look at the most recent of Fergie's fledglings that have stepped into management, which is, of course, Wayne Rooney. I was hoping we could all do a kind of a unison thing there where we all answer at the same time, but that's fine. Just leave me out here on my own. I appreciate it, guys. You know, in for a penny, in for a pound. We're going to be discussing Wayne Rooney, but also going to be discussing there has been 35 Man United players that played under Ferguson that went into management, and we're going to be trying to find who, so far as of whatever the 1st of December 2020, who we perceive that had the most successful career, and who do we think has had the worst career in management. The only caveat being, and make sure to say in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe, and come join us on YouTube if you're watching it on any other platform. Make sure to tell us who you think your favorite is, and the only caveat is that they have to have at least managed 50 games in managerial career, or else the answer would have just been Gary Neville or who else? Or Paul Scholes, who just seems to just takes up management every 5 minutes and then just gives up after 5 seconds. So will those guys get a pass for the first time ever, because we want to go into people who actually cared about being managers. But as we were just saying, Wayne Rooney, all-time leading goal scorer in our club's history, former captain of England as well, took his first step into management on the weekend with his current club, which is Derby County. And what a lot of you might know who's watching right now, we have someone here who was in that press conference. Jesus Christ. It's not Barry, even though he seemed to have met every single ex-United player and current Man United player on every roster.
Joe, you just intimated that Jesus Christ was in the press conference. I didn't realize this was a religious program.
They do say he's everywhere, though, don't they?
I was just going to say that, James. Thanks for coming in there.
He is omnipresent, of course. So yes.
Yeah, especially in the showers. But James, of course, you were there, our big man on the inside. Can you tell us? It wasn't your first time in a press conference either with Derby. It wasn't. No, you've posted a few times.
No, a couple of times. Yeah, the first one with Wayne Rooney.
What was that like?
It was a bit surreal, to be honest. I mean, I didn't get to ask anything because obviously every sort of media outlet was there for Wayne Rooney's first press conference. It was a big deal, but yeah, just to sort of, it's like you're being face to face with him. Yeah, so it was good, but you know, it was a bit revealing, but a bit sort of watered down as well, because it's obviously everyone wants to stay on his good side at the minute and keep coming back to these press conferences. So there wasn't too many outrageous statements being made, but a couple of good little ones to pick up.
So what was the vibes you got off him? I don't like, because we've all seen him in press conferences as a player, you know, and like especially as he became captain of United, and when he took a leadership role when he went to DC United and then at Derby. But could you see a change from player Rooney to management Rooney?
Yeah, he seems so much more level-headed now. He clearly is a lot calmer. He knows exactly what direction he's going. It seems a bit of a far cry from that sort of 2011 Twitter Rooney that we saw, where he offered himself out in a fight and stuff like that. He's clearly been well media trained now, but I think he is going to take this job really seriously. It seems like something that he's really excited to do, and I think if he carries this attitude forward and if it's all genuine, then I don't see why he couldn't be a top quality manager.
Oh, famous last words. We have All for United host who's joining us in the chat. Temi, thanks so much for joining. You absolute legend. Barry, you have seen a lot of players come out throughout the years, not to show your age, but where would you be confident in Rooney going into management? Would when you looked at him as a player, are you because I have a different opinion on a lot of different players. I feel like some players are born to be managers. Whether that has happened or not, it doesn't always work out. But where would you think Rooney could be? Are you surprised he's going into management as well?
Joe, I'm not surprised, but I'd like to answer this. I'd like to answer this question in about 15 years' time, because one is absolutely uncertain as to where it's going to go. He may be great, he may be terrible. I think that when one looks at Rooney's kind of persona over the years, no question about it, he's matured, no question about it. But let's remember that Rooney burst onto the scene as a 16-year-old. So, when you get a guy as a teenager, etc., you don't expect him to be the sort of bastion of maturity. But as he's moved on in his career, I think given the responsibility of captaincy, moving across to the USA, probably leading by example in the USA, I'm not surprised that he's gone into management. Quite frankly, I don't know that there would have been another career that would have opened up for him. And, we're uncertain. We're totally uncertain. If the best players made the best managers, well, he'd become one of the best managers. And if the best players made the best managers, Fergie wouldn't have been the best manager. So it's very, very difficult to comment. I think we've got to give him a chance. But I think he's got the credentials. We, of course, are seeing, because of social media, because of television, young managers are thrown into the spotlight immediately. So, if you cast your mind back to imagine when Fergie was a young manager at Queen's Park, at St Mirren, at places like that, I think he probably would have come in for a lot of criticism, because let's remember, he once got fired. So, or as you call it in the UK, sacked. So, he'll come under a lot of scrutiny based on his career, based that he's been a controversial fella. And, you're judged on results. If the guys don't perform on the pitch, the manager goes. So he'll be judged on results. And I say, in all honesty, I have no idea what kind of manager he'll make. I hope a successful one. Let's wait and see. And, on this program, like I say, when you're grey-haired in 15 years' time, maybe you'll be talking about Wayne Rooney, the Man United manager. Who knows?
It's very true, because we got a comment in here from Boogie, who's Rooney will have to go to management training and have to start from somewhere, another club maybe. For now, he will. For now, we can't say how he will do, and that's the thing as well. Great point, Boogie. And guys, please leave the thoughts in the comments of how you think Rooney will get on in management when eventually it does get into full flight. But that's the thing is, you never ever know. It's impossible to know how someone will get on, because. I'm trying to think. I never would have thought Zidane would go into management. I never, because mainly because he's a flair player. I always thought managers are mainly people who were further back behind the game, who could see the whole game being played, mainly centre backs and stuff like that. But I never thought of Zidane as going into manager, and then he's won 3 Champions Leagues in a row. And then you have other people like someone who will come up a lot very soon in the conversation, I'm sure, like Roy Keane, who I thought was born to be a manager. When he played for United, when he was our captain, Ferguson said he was the manager on the pitch. So you were kind of it's just a natural, it seemed it would take such little effort for him to move from the central midfield to where he's manager, to the dugout. But I think the problem is, which I'll get into very soon, is that the game changed so much that if Keane was playing in the 80s at the exact same level, the exact same mentality, and went into management in the 90s, I think he could have been a great success. But I just think his personality and his style of dealing with players does not fit with modern football, unfortunately, because I would love to see nothing more. But to kind of finish our last thoughts, so we got a comment in here. I love Rooney. He has never shown the maturity to lead men to take the responsibility of the same. Is that a fair comment, guys, do you think?
I don't know that I'd agree with that, because Rooney, I I thought was pretty reasonable as a captain. And a lot of the young lads have actually commented that he's been very helpful to them. He captained England, so I don't know that that's fair. Sorry, I've hogged this. Let's hear what James has to say.
Go ahead. Your granddad has given you permission.
Oh, cheers. I think it'll be difficult for him because, like the comment we had earlier, he does need to learn a bit of sort of tactical familiarity. I don't think he's quite going to be on sort of Pep Guardiola's level just yet, and I don't think he ever will. But I think he is a natural leader. We saw that at United, and obviously he's got probably the perfect opportunity at Derby. He's transitioning from captain to manager in a team full of players that he knows inside out from playing with them, and he'll have their respect as well. This is a young team who will have grown up watching Wayne Rooney, so they'll respect will be there instantly based on his achievements, and there's no pressure anyway. He started as manager at the bottom of the league, so he can't really go any further down, can he? So I think this is probably the perfect job for him to sense whether this is a viable option for him, really, and it'll be the perfect opportunity for him to sort of find his feet as a manager, if that makes sense.
I completely agree with you, and for me, we'll kind of close the book on Rooney now. We'll be talking about ex-players, and then we'll be talking about the future, of more recent players that are kind of moving into management now later on in the conversation. But to kind of close the book on just specifically to Rooney, I think for me, the level of maturity he has gained, I think since his presence on the pitch as an actual footballer, since about 2011 when it was on the wane, I think his presence as a captain and as a personality in the dressing room at United and around the club has been exceptional. And every club he goes to, the players automatically look up to him because of his stature in the game, but they respect him because he talks to them on their level. He doesn't talk above them. And I do believe he has the mentality, and especially if you're reading his articles that he's been releasing as well, I think he is a very, very sharp mind, which is something I didn't expect either. So I do believe that there is a very good manager in there, but at the same thing, you just never ever know. You never ever know where it's going to go. So we're going to move on a bit with the conversation now. Oh, by the way, James, how did this first game go?
They drew 1-1 with Wickham, who was second bottom in the league, so it probably could have gone better, but a point's better than none. So
yeah, it definitely could have got a lot worse too. Absolutely. Then we're going to move on to the conversation, guys. I was just discussing with the guys before this. There have been 35 players that have gone on to management that have played for Manchester United under Alex Ferguson, to a very, very varying level of success. And we're going to be discussing with the guys their favourite, who they believe has done the best job, who has done the worst, and then we'll discuss a few others in the middle as well. So please get in the comments, come on to YouTube, check us out, All for United. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel as well, and get in the comments and give us your opinion too. The one caveat I'm saying is, and this is for everyone coming in, is that the manager that you might suggest has been the worst or the best, they have to have at least managed 50 games to be seen as being someone, because otherwise they just took a stab at management and realized it wasn't for them. We want someone who is actively want to be a manager and be successful. So Gary Neville, Phil Neville don't count. Who else doesn't count? Paul Scholes doesn't count, and Ryan Giggs doesn't count because none of them have managed 50 games. And the funny thing is, what I've just realized, I was looking through stats there. There's a 27 club in Manchester United. Mark Hughes' last job at Southampton, he got sacked after 27 games. Gary Neville got sacked after 27 games at Valencia, and Ryan Giggs has managed 27 games for Wales and looks like he might end up getting the sack if things go the way they might end up going. So if you get past 27, you're at least a successful manager in some rights. So we're going to start. Will we start with the positives? I think it might be the best way to go. Barry, who for you is your favourite managed by Fergie, gone into management player, if that makes sense?
The first thing to say is I passed 27 a long time ago, so I'm good. Thank you for that reassuring.
Yeah, I think we covered that in the first 10 minutes of the video as well. But
it's most appreciated. Yeah. So, favourite managers, how do you judge? Do you judge by trophies?
Yeah.
If we're going to judge a manager by trophies, then I think maybe someone that people may not have thought about, Laurent Blanc.
Yes.
He would be somebody that I think possibly has won more trophies in management than any other ex-Man United player. I might be wrong. This is not something I've read up or studied. I'm just talking off the top of my head. And Blanc, of course, in France, won the league with Bordeaux, and he won a hat-trick of leagues with PSG. Of course, he got shafted by PSG because he couldn't get them very far in the Champions League, and hopefully that trend will continue with PSG. He managed the French national team, not to any silverware, but he had a very good reputation, and he was linked on more than one occasion with the United job, in fact. So he, I guess, would stand out as a guy who won trophies. I think if one looks at longevity, again, I stand to be corrected, but probably the guy who's managed the most games as a manager that played for United is Steve Bruce. And of course, as the joke gets used in many different contexts, Bruce has kind of more clubs than Ian Woosnam had in his golf bag. So he's he's been at a lot of different clubs. He saved clubs from relegation. So I would certainly rank him as a manager, but to the best of my knowledge, a trophyless manager.
Steve Bruce.
I think.
Sorry, go on, Barry.
I think then I'm going to maybe stop there and let James comment, because I can certainly go further, but I'd be interested to hear what young James has to say.
Well, obviously I had Laurent Blanc as my first choice as well, but I thought that would go. So I picked up on Gordon Strachan. I think.
Yes.
I know he wasn't. I know he wasn't such an amazing player from what I've seen and heard, but he did all right with Southampton, didn't he? Took them to an FA Cup final, and then what he did with Celtic as well. That was obviously not very hard, but it was still good nonetheless. I think he won 3 back-to-back leagues. He did all right in the Champions League with them. I think they beat the classic AC Milan team in the Champions League as well. And I think it's a pretty dismal showing from ex-United managers. So I think second behind Laurent Blanc has to, in terms of success anyway, has to go to Gordon Strachan.
I would agree with. The thing about Gordon Strachan as well is because I completely forgot about him as a player. Same with Laurent Blanc. When I was doing my own research on this, obviously Laurent Blanc is the most successful, and he is probably the only ex-United player that was really properly kind of linked to getting the job. Like, you could put an argument probably in around the Louis van Gaal time, he was probably the only one you could say like there was a good chance he could get the job of ex-United players. And someone actually put up, I can't pronounce your name, I'm really, really sorry. Put up Steve Koppel, was he at United under Fergie? I don't think they had a crossover. He was there 78 till about 84. Or am I wrong, Barry?
Yeah.
When did Koppel leave?
Yeah, around to my knowledge, Steve Koppel didn't play under Fergie.
Yeah.
But of course, his career as a manager, well, particularly at Man City, was not very good. But of course, Steve Koppel, you've got to remember, managed Crystal Palace pretty successfully.
He did Reading. Did he manage Crystal Palace? He managed Reading. Like, that's kind of the job. Is it Reading? It was Reading, wasn't it, James? He was at Reading.
I think he might have managed Reading. The name rings a bell, but I say it's not someone I sort of know much about.
He got Reading to the Premier League.
Yeah. Steve Koppel played for United predominantly in the 70s. And he was signed from Tranmere. He was part-time initially because he has a university degree from, I think, the University of Liverpool. And Steve Koppel held the record for the most consecutive league appearances for United. He didn't miss a game for about 6 seasons. And his career was tragically cut short, injured playing for England.
So typical England. Yeah, see if he does deserve a shout, just not on the Fergie. We'll get to Ollie, don't worry, Boogie, but it's a great comment. And guys, please keep your comments coming in. Who is your favourite ex-player that went into management, and also your least favourite? Well, there's a lot more least favourite that we can talk about. But Laurent Blanc, like I was saying, he won, like when he won the league with Bordeaux. That was kind of the last time France was an even, maybe Montpellier, but definitely Bordeaux was the last time that France was like open. You know, that a good team with a good manager can come in after PSG just bought it since. And then Gordon Strachan is a fantastic shout because he played, no matter where he went, he always wanted to play excellent football. That was kind of his goal. And you find it's rare enough to find managers kind of his age and his ilk that their passion is to play football and also last as long as he did. Because my most recent memory of him is he was manager of Scotland up until I think 2016 or 2017, because he was they were in Ireland's group. And I remember like the Irish pundits going crazy because they went to Germany and they lost 2-1, but they actually played really, really well. And the pundits were like, why can't we play well? Why can't we play like Gordon Strachan in Scotland? And then we played crap football and drew. But now, you know, it's we got the results, but like we won no fans for it. But Gordon Strachan as well, like, I think a lot of people aren't giving him credit for what he did in Celtic at that time, because that was the last time Celtic were, I can't say competitive in the Champions League, but were a team to beat. You know, they were difficult. They went and they got to the last 16 or the quarterfinals on a regular basis, not like now where they can't even get past. Remember they lost to Lincoln Imps, Red Imps from Gibraltar 1-0. In the first round qualifier. So like they've really fallen far. So I think Martin O'Neill kind of overshadows what Gordon Strachan did because he got them to a UEFA Cup final. But what Gordon Strachan did at Celtic was really, really good, keeping that standard up, was excellent stuff with less money. Then at Southampton, obviously, he kept them in the Premier League, which is always their first thing, but also got them to the FA Cup final when they lost to Arsenal, who won the double that year. And then also keeping Coventry in the Premier League for as long as he could, while playing good football. So I think as ex-players go, like I think as a top two shout, it's really hard to look past the two of them, which is in a way kind of depressing. You know, and also someone has put out Jacob, absolutely, and Jacob, thank you so much for coming back. Good to have you in the comments. Do you remember when Brian Robson did the Great Escape of West Brom in 2004? And Barry, I've been dying because I can remember in passing the Brian Robson kind of managerial, maybe 8 years he was like was trying to be a top class manager anyway, where he seemed to be doing stuff. Like, was there any time during whether he was at Middlesbrough or he was at even West Brom, but maybe mostly Middlesbrough, because I know he got to an FA Cup final twice in a row, where you thought this guy could manage United?
Yes, so he did well at Middlesbrough initially. I think he had a very good relationship with the chairman, who was a very dynamic fellow. They brought in exciting players at Middlesbrough, the likes of Juninho and Fabrizio Romano. Not Romano.
Yes,
sorry.
Ravanelli.
Ravanelli, I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
Ravanelli. So they had a couple of key signings. They were an exciting side. So he did okay. But, at the end of the day, again, I guess, I prefer looking back on Robbo as a great player and leader.
Yeah.
I think he'll probably be best known for what that previous viewer mentioned, for that great escape with West Brom, who, of course, was his alma mater. So that was quite poetic. But I don't think great shakes as a manager, but he did okay at times.
But there was never a time...
As we've said, if you're judged by trophies, the majority of lads that manage United, that played for United, have gone into management, have not done great.
Yeah, it's the same with. But was there ever a time? Was there ever like after you maybe were a couple of whiskies in, and maybe after Middlesbrough we got to the FA Cup final, maybe for the second year in a row, when you were like, "Oh, take Robbo Bick. I want Robbo Beck." No. Thanks for
Joe. Your Australian accent is coming on well.
Very much appreciated. Thank you very much, Barry, for that. Was Bruce and Hughes managed so many Premier League teams? Absolutely. James, for yourself, if you're looking at I suppose we have talked about Mark Hughes. We haven't really touched on Steve Bruce much either. But for you, James, first of all, Mark Hughes or Steve Bruce? If you had to pick one of them to manage Manchester United, who would you pick?
It would be a dire set of affairs if it was down to those two, wouldn't it? But I think Steve Bruce, I think he's got a bit more Premier League credibility, and I'm fairly sure, it's probably going to sound stupid if I get this wrong, but I'm fairly sure Mark Hughes has managed Man City, so I don't really want him anywhere near our team again. I remember in the last couple of years, we got Mark Hughes sacked, didn't we? When we went 2-0 down to Southampton and pulled it back to 2-2, and the day later he was gone. So, I'm not a massive fan of Mark Hughes. I just think he's generally quite a boring bloke, and that's saying a lot when I prefer Steve Bruce's personality in football over him. So, it's a very close call, but I'd probably go Steve Bruce.
Yeah, I love Steve Bruce, and I've met him before. And actually, my dad, Niall Quinn and Steve Bruce used to be part owners in a pub in Naas, where I'm from, Naas. Well, Niall Quinn is, but Steve Bruce would come over the whole time, especially when he was manager of Sunderland, and he would stay during Punchestown races. But there would always be like Sky Sports, like Jamie Redknapp's been here, Chris Kamara. They'd always be in around Naas because it's so close to Punchestown. And my dad went up to him one year when he met him. It might have been the year he was over. He's having a cigarette. It was actually the week before the whole FA Cup final against Arsenal, and he said, "I just wanted to thank you for giving me the greatest memories when you scored the 2 headers against Sheffield Wednesday." And he just went, "Thanks very much, and appreciate it." And I said, "Dad, what about when I was born, or my other 3 siblings?" And he was like, "Yes, Joe, but there's 4 of you. There's only one time you can win the Premier League for the first time." And I was like, "Oh, that's fair. I do the same." But
what do you mean there's 4 of you, Joe?
Well, not 4 of me, but I'm 3 siblings and myself.
I mean, a clone of Joe. 4 of you would be an utter, absolute nightmare.
You could probably take over the world.
I think I would agree. There's a lot more I could do. I would definitely set 2 of me to just constantly upset you, Barry. I would send them over to South Africa and just be outside your front door and just talk to you every day. And
one of you suffices, but you would be welcome here anytime, Joe. Anytime.
You charmer, you charmer. But we're going to go down the pecking order. Oh well, Barry, actually on the Mark Hughes thing, what was sure, thank you very much for that. Coronavirus. That's what I think is going to stick, Stuart. And thanks so much for coming back, Stuart. It's always great to have you. And guys, please sound off in the comments on your thoughts on every manager we're mentioning. But Barry, as you're kind of older, because my dad would, I don't know why he would say as well, I want Mark Hughes to be manager of United. He was a great player, and he was like, he'd always say he did well at Blackburn, and like he never got a chance at City. And we were like, yes, but I would always put the argument back is that after City, he never did anything to prove that he was unjustly sacked. Yeah. Do you know? But for you, when he went to City, were you when he went to City, were you kind of like, that's him done? Do you know, he's kind of cut to, like any ties or whatever?
Definitely not. I must say, those aren't my thought processes. You know, we've got to look at the fact that, you know, it's a free market out there. A guy needs a job. He wants to earn a living. I mean, if he's an ex-player from the modern era, I mean, I'm sure he's got many millions closeted away in the bank. But, you know, it's a free world. And I have to say that when a player has played for you, or moved to another club, or a guy's gone to manage another club, personally, I don't believe in castigating them. I really don't. Yeah. They're looking for work. It's employment, potentially families to feed, to support, etc. I don't have an issue with that at all. And I mean, Mark Hughes, for me, Mark Hughes is one of the legends of United. Great player. Hell of a boring as a manager, but we commented on that before.
I agree with you to that extent. The only time I would ever be like, you know, get away from me forever is if anyone dreamt of managing Liverpool. That would be the only time that I'd be no, that's different. But with City, Yeah, City aren't rivals. The City are a corporation. So, like, you can do whatever you want with them. And as long as you don't do well, then it's fine.
Yeah,
Brown Knight. Yes, they are a small club. Brown Knight, thank you so much for joining us again. What you've missed, we're going down the pecking order of Man United, ex-Man United players that have gone into management. We've hit the peak of who has been good. And we're sliding down slowly of the eventual, like, the majority of the 35 that have not had the best careers. So we'll slide down further again. Who would you put as had the worst career management post-retirement? Who wants to go first? Dead air. This is what everyone came here for.
Go on, James.
Barry?
Well, in my research, there was a lot of bad ones, but they were sort of bad because they sort of managed nobody teams and did nothing with them really. But one that stuck out, as painful as it is to say, is Mike Phelan. He's probably one of the best assistant managers we've ever had. But the only team he's managed full time was Hull City, and I think he was in charge of them for about 62 days, and then he got sacked. So I think that in a season in the Premier League,
was he there for 50 games though?
No, he doesn't count. Doesn't count.
Fair enough.
That's right.
Fair enough.
He was there for 82 days.
Well,
good shout, Barry. I completely forgot about my only rule there.
As a personal prejudice, then, just from his time as a player, I'll go with Darren Ferguson, because he was an absolutely nobody player generally, and he's been a nobody manager. He's had 3 different spells with Peterborough and done nothing really. He might have gotten promoted out of League One a few times and then sent them straight back down. He's like a lower version of Steve Bruce and Mark Hughes in that he sort of plays limp football and is a bit boring here and there. But I say there's not been the rest of them have just been sort of managing very little teams in very little countries and doing very little special. So I think someone who's actually had a substantial career and still not really done much at all, I'd go with Darren Ferguson.
There's a couple of comments here for Dwight York from Brown and Ger Hunt. Am I just gone blank? I don't remember Dwight York going into management. Did he not manage Trinidad and Tobago at one stage?
He could have possibly, but I don't. If he did, he didn't get 50 games in. But thanks for. If you guys can tell us in the comments of who he managed and for how long, I really appreciate that. But I think I get where you're coming from with Darren Ferguson. I would disagree because I think that's his level, and he kept being hired back by Peterborough, and he kept giving them what they wanted. So I guess I put him down as a lower level Steve Bruce. I think my things, we've had so many false dawns. And someone just commented who I'm going to say. So many managers that had a bright spark to begin with and then faded out. Yeah, like some people we mentioned already, you can say Mark Hughes. There's Paul Ince, who I was going to say. There's Roy Keane. There's a few more I can't think off the top of my head. I have them written down somewhere. But Paul Ince for me is was a very, very frustrating one. And Henningberg as well, actually. Who started really, really bright at... Oh, was it Macclesfield? Sorry, guys. Can somebody say in the comment? Was it Macclesfield he was at first? Or did he go to Macclesfield afterwards? I can't find my sheet. But he started so brightly, and then... Or was it Dons? MK Dons. Yes, it was MK Dons. Started at MK Dons, and then he went to Blackburn. And with this huge fanfare behind him after doing so well, and then did nothing. Did absolutely nothing. And got sacked, and then ended up, I think, at Chesterfield or something like that.
I think that's a good shout-out, Henningberg. The one that I was going to say, in fact, you mentioned was Paul Ince.
That's who I said. I said Paul Ince.
Yeah.
But Henningberg as well.
I may be a little bit impartial towards Paul Ince because we see him as a pundit on the Premiership channel here in South Africa. And I don't know, he kind of enjoys turning the knife into Man United. I don't know that should prejudice me, but it does. So he was no great shakes as a manager. Sorry to say, Joe, but your mate Keno also wasn't great shakes, although he did have a great season with Sunderland.
Barry, I'm going to say, there's very few managers that we've already said that have actually won anything. So I think the fact that he came in, and don't forget, if you take his time with Sunderland and only Sunderland, he took them from 24th in the table, where they had their chairman was their manager for the first 4 games. They got knocked out of the League Cup. They lost the first 4 or 5 games in a row, he took them from that to actually going up as champions. And then not only that, he kept them in the league. I can't remember if he kept them in the league twice. I know he kept them in the league for the first season, and then I think he got sacked halfway or left halfway through his second season. And then Ricky Sabea, or however you say his name, he took over and kept them up. And then that started that mad trend of Sunderland managers getting sacked with 10 games left and then being kept up miraculously.
I think Sunderland was so traumatized by Keane that they never recovered.
There's a fantastic possibility that might be it. But I remember I was listening to, because obviously anytime Roy Keane does anything, there's a lot of fanfare over here in Ireland about it. So I've heard a lot of stories from like the Sunderland side of things, and like especially when they're interviewing people about like the Sunderland job might be up, and they'd reference the fact Roy Keane is still really highly revered there because he was the one who kept them up for the first, and then they stayed there for 8 seasons. It was kind of it was his temperament.
Yeah, I think your mentioning of Henning Berg is a very good answer to that. I think he'd probably come out tops in this unwanted poll.
Yeah, I think so as well. James, did you put out a suggestion?
I did, yeah. Well, it was of the players that have managed.
Oh, sorry,
games, Darren Ferguson, wasn't it? Just because he's a dull bloke.
Well, that's a fair enough reason than any. And I think, Henning Berg, as far as I know, if someone could look it up in the comments, Brown Knight just asking, and the Neville brothers, the one kind of caveat we're putting on a Brown Knight is that they have to have managed more than 50 games professionally, because that's what we were saying at the beginning is the only way you can actually look into managers like who actually want to be managers and not just failed once is if they've had like either a long stretch of time with one club or have tried at several clubs several times. I'm going to read out the list of if I can find it, 35 players, which is kind of it's a who's who or who are they. There's Brian Robson, Gordon Strachan, Clayton Blackmore, Chris Turner, Frank Stapleton, Peter Davenport, Steve Bruce, Viv Anderson, where's it? Mark Hughes, Mark Robbins, Mike Phelan, Paul Ince, Neil Webb, Darren Ferguson, Paul Parker, Andrea Konchelskis, Pat McGibbon, Simon Davis, Michael Appleton, Ryan Giggs, Gary Neville, Philip Neville, Paul Scholes, Chris Casper, Roy Keane, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Jordi Cruyff, Teddy Sheringham, Henning Berg, Jaap Stam. Actually, we'll come back to Jaap Stam in a minute. David Healy, Lauren Blanc, Diego Forlan, Gabriel Heinze, and Henrik Larsson. Larsson was doing well actually in Heisen. I can't pronounce the name. That he was at Sweden. Go ahead.
Did you mention Paul Parker?
Yes. Are you going to give out about me again, putting him at right back?
Yeah. So I mean, you put him at right back, but you didn't mention him as a failed manager. You have a
I didn't know it.
No?
I just feel bad for the guy. The Jaap Stam, that's another false dawn, and that was a very frustrating one because I remember him. He went to Reading and he got them to the championship playoff final, and I think they lost to QPR when Harry Redknapp got them up, and then he just absolutely shit the bed from there. Did nothing afterwards. That was a very kind of, if anyone you can imagine being like Man United manager for me, aside from Roy Keane, you look at Jaap Stam and you're like, there is a born leader. There was someone that could take any shit from any player. But it's just unfortunate it didn't work out. Yeah, for across the board, we don't have a great track record of producing managers, but luckily we had the greatest manager of all time anyway. So it's not his fault.
You know what, Joe? We're interested in our team winning trophies. To hell with what they do when they go to other clubs. As long as United
I completely agree. Yes, I cannot agree with you more, Barry. That is a fantastic point. And guys, if you have any other managers that you'd like to mention, put them into the comments below. And we'll have a quick, and it is kind of funny a little bit that you look at the class of 92, pretty much all of them have gone into management in some form. Phil Neville got England to level what they did in the male World Cup as the female World Cup, came fourth, which is actually an underachievement because I think they were expected to get at least to the final. So I think And he's leaving in 2021. He's leaving that job. So he has the last shout, I think, at the Women's European Championship. So see if he can get success for there. I hope he doesn't, because I don't want England to win no matter what, the sport or anyone. So I hope he gets a nice tan wherever it's being held. And then you have Gary Neville, obviously. We're just going to touch on these as these don't count. But Gary Neville, I was kind of surprised how you look at Valencia, you look at what he went into there. He's it was a bad shout to go in there, and the only reason he got in there was because the co-owner of Salford, is the owner of Valencia, and I suppose he said it himself. It was an offer he couldn't turn down. I think we all wish he did, because I've Liverpool mates of mine that are like, "Oh, we can't listen to a word that Gary Neville said because he's a crap manager." I was like, "But Jamie, like, why do you just believe Jamie Carragher is a better manager because he never even tried?" You know, it's like, yeah, but like, he just is a better manager. I was like, no, you're not speaking facts. You're speaking like Scousers, which is speaking idiots. So I think we all wish he didn't go into that job. And then who else is there? Paul Scholes. Who knows what he's doing there? I don't even know what goes on in that man's mind. He just seems to take a job every time he feels like it at Oldham, and then just leaves after 20 minutes. So I think he's just going to be a pundit. And then who is the only one I can actually see out of all the class 92 who might go into management and be like full-time first team coaching would be Nicky Butt. Is that a silence of approval, a silence of agreement from the two of you? Or?
Yeah, no, he's very involved in the academy at United and the under 23s and the various other teams. So yeah,
and he's very highly respected. So were you saying something, Barry?
Brian McClare, he's more involved in. He didn't manage. He was more involved in the Scottish Youth Academy, but he didn't manage. Yeah,
he didn't manage. He was involved with the youth team. And guys, get your sound off in the comment. We're going to go in the last part of the chat now as well. And I think everyone's doing. Oh, okay, that'd be great. Pat is doing his badges with us, which would be great. Hopefully, he could turn out to be a great manager. And actually, perfectly brings us on to the final part of the of our conversation in this podcast. And please, guys, sound off in the comments. Get your thoughts in on this. Of our more recent squad, of course, we discussed Rooney. We've Michael Carrick, who is sitting on our bench, and of course, we have to speak about our manager. Actually, before we go into the final part, if you were going to rank Solskjaer of the ex-United players that have gone into management so far, would you be ranking him in the top half of the 35, the bottom half of the 35, or right down the middle? James, you first.
I'd say he's pretty near the top, to be fair. I mean, he's not got much competition, but what he's done with United deserves probably more recognition than it's already getting. I think he's definitely not up there with Blanc or Strachan or anything. You know, he's not even won anything yet, but I don't think he's been a failure of a manager. And I think even people in the top 10 have been failures in their own way. So I'd say he's pretty high up at the minute. He's obviously not got that longevity yet that you'd need to fairly judge him as well. But yeah, I don't think he's doing a bad job.
Yeah, that's fair. Barry, for yourself, where would you rank him? Top half, bottom half, middle?
Well, quite frankly, to be in the top half of that list of 35, you don't have to have done very much because it's a bit of a woeful list. But I would rank him. I'd rank him in the top half because he had success in Norway. He wasn't good at Cardiff.
Yeah, of course.
He's very divisive in terms of what's going on at United, but I think he's on the right track. And, you know, he's the man in the job at the moment. And whenever we've come back from a 2-0 deficit to win 3-2, things are looking very rosy. So at the moment, it's only in. If we lose to PSG, the knives will be out. But in all seriousness, I'd certainly rank him in the top half. And I would sincerely hope that in time, we will be able to rank him as number one. I hope he's successful.
I completely agree with you. That is a great shout, and hopefully that is what happens. And Jacob, thank you for the football update. Madrid 0-0 at halftime, so if you have a bet on, you've probably lost it. So to move on to our final part of the conversation, and thank you so much again, guys, for joining us and everyone in the comments. Make sure to get your last thoughts in, and we're discussing the current team and the more recent players that have yet, like we just said, I think Brown and I put in Evra. If you were going to go from maybe Ferguson's last title-winning squad, so you have like Ferdinand, Vidic, Rooney as well is there, of course. Carrick. If you were going across that team, maybe the last team you could say that has our leaders, who would you think? I know we were discussing as well earlier on that it's very hard to know, but if you're going to pick someone from that final squad to go into management and hopefully be a success, who would you say? And guys, in the comments as well, get your thoughts in. James, we'll let you go first on that one.
I was thinking Robin van Persie.
Really?
I don't think he has, the leadership sort of man management thing that Ferguson had, but I don't think that's becoming as important in management. I think his flair and awareness and just tactical nous on the pitch will set him in good stead. I think he just seems like one of those people who is incredibly smart in terms of football, and I think if he puts his mind to it and if he really starts knuckling down, he could use Edwin van der Sar as a mentor. He's obviously doing well in football. He's got a lot of Dutch managers he could learn from. He played under both Wenger and Ferguson, probably two of the best managers in the Premier League era. So I think the credentials are there. It might be a bit of a left field shout. He might never even go into management at all, but I think he could possibly, surprise a few people.
To be honest, I do think he's gone into coaching. I believe that he's doing that at Feyenoord. So I think that is a very good shot. Yeah, he's a Feyenoord. And I think out of all of that last squad, I think he would also look the best in a suit. Like, he would definitely be a suit manager on the sideline. I don't think he'd show any expression. It would just be a nod of approval. I think so anyway. Barry, for yourself, out of that last Ireland squad.
I have to say, I was going to go with Van Persie myself. I agree completely. I think he's a pretty level-headed guy. I think that he's played under two fantastic managers in Wenger and Fergie, and Van Gaal. He, when you listen to Van Persie speaking, he actually rates Louis van Gaal as a very, very good manager. So he's kind of got that background. He's gone into coaching. He would be my obvious choice. I don't know that there's really anybody else. If you'd count Edwin van der Sar towards, Van der Sar finished in 2011. Obviously, Van der Sar has acquitted himself superbly as a director of football at Ajax. And he would be one that I kind of could imagine. I don't know that he'd want a role as a manager, but I think that United have cried out for leaders in the last few seasons, and I don't see many, to be quite honest with you. I don't know. Very difficult question to answer. It's a theoretical question. It's something that we've got to look back in retrospect and comment on.
I completely agree.
But that's why a lot of players do their coaching badges. I think that they do it largely, I think, from a security point of view going forward. I think that's where they're coming from with respect to that.
I completely agree with you. And to be honest, Barry, what we have to all do now is make a claim that every single ex-player is going to be a success or a failure. So then in 20 years' time, we can look back and say, hey, I was right. I was right 20 years ago. I was a genius and no one listened to me. It's all about retrospectively pretending you're intelligent.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can you imagine? Fast forward 25 years, and we've just won the quadruple under the stewardship of Jesse Lingard.
Oh, that's definitely an odds-on favorite, and that's definitely my new favorite thing Barry said in the video. We have a good shout here, actually, an interesting one. We've got, is it the right one coming up? Yeah, Darren Fletcher from Jacob. A great comment, Jacob. Darren Fletcher could have made a good manager. Well, he still could make a good manager. He may still be one. He's just doing punditry and newspaper stuff. He could go into it. I think Fletcher. Sorry, Barry. Do you want to say something?
Yes, I think that comment from Jacob is excellent. And in fact, I think I certainly apologize for overlooking Darren Fletcher. I don't know if you've watched the podcast on MUTV with Darren Fletcher. It's excellent. He's really, it's very, very well worth listening to. And when they ask him what his ultimate ambition is, what is his ambition? It's to manage Man United. So a great point from Jacob there. I absolutely agree.
A mate of mine, because Darren Fletcher he's half Irish. His mom is from Mayo, and he's very in touch with his Irish heritage. And this is fantastic. And a mate of mine, whenever, I don't know if you guys know, I was explaining on James' podcast last night of GAA. Do you know anything about GAA, Barry?
About what? Sorry?
GAA. It's the national sport of Ireland. It's Gaelic football. It's like an amateur sport, but it's the most.
The only thing I know about Gaelic football is that Kevin Moran and Johnny Carey both played Gaelic football.
Kevin Moran won an All-Ireland title the same year he won the FA Cup. He's the only player in history to ever do it, and no one knew that he was doing that back in Ireland because there was no internet. He just said he was going home for a few weeks and won the All-Ireland. But and he would Darren Fletcher, his mom's from Mayo, and would always come back and watch Mayo whenever they're in a final or in a big match, and he's been pitching there the whole time. But a mate of mine met him about maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago in Mayo. He was on holidays, and so was Darren Fletcher, and they ended up having a few drinks and everything together. And they said he was getting on really well, lovely guy, and he said the worst thing to him. He said, "Must have been pretty shit to miss the Champions League final because he was suspended." And he looked at him again. He went, "Have a good night, mate," and just walked away. And it's like, why would you bring up one of the worst things? Why not say, it must have been great when you scored against Chelsea. Tell me your favourite memory from the 5 Premier League titles you won, or the Champions League title you won as well. But he brought up the one thing, probably the low light in his career, was missing that Champions League final because of suspension. So we like rubbing that in his face. And Darren Fletcher is a certified hero, according to hearsay. So that's a great thing. He's a nice guy. For me, I would say from that team, I wouldn't say from the personalities at that time. I think Van Persie's a great shout. A lot of people are saying, yeah, Brown Knight, you're dead right. I was going to bring this guy up with Big Mickey Carrick. As well as Carrick. I do think so. I think it's very hard to know because he's quiet, but if you're going by the way someone looks at the game and understands it, Carrick is probably the most underappreciated centre midfielder England have had in about 30 years. He should have been starting, and we can have this debate until the cows come on, but he should have been starting for most of the time that we're doing the Carrick, the Gerrard Lampard debate. He should have been in the holding midfield controlling the whole ball. But aside from that, he's been held in high regard at United at the moment for his coaching work. And he seems to have the right temperament to go into management and all like that. So I would like to see him go up in the world and have a go at it. Am I talking crazy here? Or?
Yes, as usual.
Thanks for holding back, Barry, to save my feelings.
No, time will tell. Joe, he seems a level-headed guy. He is a guy that I think some of the younger players certainly looked up to. He is, when guys get involved in charity work like he does, it shows, a good sense of community, etc. So these are all things that I guess one looks for in a manager. But there are different types of management. I can't imagine Carrick being this kind of loud, aggressive guy, which you don't necessarily have to be. He seems to be a chap who would lead by example. And it's very hard. I'm finding it very difficult to understand the management at United. We don't hear much about the team around Ollie, etc. But they certainly strike more confidence in me than, for example, the mob that Moyes surrounded himself with.
Yes.
So, and I think it's one that we'll have to see. So, if Carrick goes into management, obviously they have to break away from United. I wouldn't see if Ollie gets the chop, I wouldn't see Carrick becoming his successor.
He was actually, I think I said this on a podcast before, he was the favourite when Solskjaer took over. Just before that, it was Solskjaer with the favourite, and then it was Carrick because they thought Solskjaer, the only reason they went to Carrick instead was they thought that Solskjaer would be too soft. And they want something a bit harder, and so they see Carrick as being a bit more hard-nosed, a bit more of a disciplinarian. Until they realised that the perfect person was Solskjaer to take over at that time. Hopefully, he will be this perfect person for years to come. Brown Knight says, "You can be a United manager circa 2050," and then he says, "Sir Marcus Rashford." If there's anyone from the current squad who I could see going into management, and you mentioned charity work, Barry, It's hard to say again because everything's hearsay and stuff like that. But he seems to have a really good head in him at 22. His priorities are in the right place with everything he's doing for charity and the fact that, and let's be honest, if he is a manager of Man United, he'll be managing the country. So
incredible. But I think maybe in 2050, Sir Marcus Rashford will be the Prime Minister of Britain.
Yes, I think you've heard it here first, people. You've heard it here first. Jay, for the Labour Party. James, for yourself, can you look past Marcus Rashford from the current squad?
Probably not. I've just seen a comment for Fernandes. He'd do a good job, but I'd be surprised if football was even a sport in 2050 the way it's going. To be fair,
that's a conversation for next week podcast.
Maybe Harry Maguire, because he seems like an all right leader, and he's got that sort of that, like you said earlier, a manager where he reads the game from the back and he sees the whole pitch. So maybe you can translate that over.
Yeah, I've one final thing I want to. This is kind of more of an open football question too, but we're seeing like a trend. I think Barry, you were on a podcast with me before discussing this. A trend of ex-players coming back to their former clubs, or even kind of ex-players go of high level, like the likes of Lampard, Arteta, Guardiola, like these players going into football, into management, which they don't really need to, because back 20, 30 years ago, you did it because you wanted to continue playing in football and earning a wage. But would you say, if you're looking at ratios, would you say it's more success rate the better player you are? Even if you're looking at the...
Will a good player make a good manager? Is that what you're asking?
I guess the answer to that is no. But I mean, like right now, we seem to have more players than ever that are like high level players coming in to play football, coming to manage football teams. And has it been a mixed bag, or has it been more success than than good than bad? Because you look at Arteta.
I think it's a mixed bag. But if you go look at management in the 50s, a lot of managers back then in the 60s were ex-players. In fact, most of them were. So they'd all played football. So it's not a new trend. What I would like in a club is I like the way a club like Ajax or Bayern Munich are run, with a lot of ex-players in executive positions. And I'd like to see, certainly, I know it's straying from the topic, but at United, I'd like to see more ex-players in the boardroom than the sort of clique of the Bristol University merchant bankers that we have.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone going to be disagreeing in the comments over that one, Barry. But James, for yourself, with the more, because it is, I get what you're saying though. Look, 50s up until about the 90s, it was all ex-players coming and rising up and be managers that way. But I think with the fact that there's institutions now, and like Kartik is training to be a coach in university at the moment, and that wasn't available 50 years ago, or wasn't accessible. So I think it's more accessible now that like regular people, or even lower down, because you look at Mourinho, he was a nothing footballer. Arsene Wenger was a nothing footballer. If you go through anyone else that come to mind, I don't think Dean Smith did anything as a player. Some of them did play football, but not to any level, James, for yourself, would you say Jurgen Klopp had no real success as a footballer? He was fine. But what are your thoughts, James?
I think if you're looking in terms of that ratio that you said earlier, I think it's probably 50-50 at the minute of good players to bad players making good managers. Like you look at the best managers in the world right now, and the successful ones. You've got sort of Pep and Zidane, and maybe Hansi Flick. He was an all right player, but they're the three that stick out in my mind as good players, very good players that have gone on to be very good managers. And then you look at sort of the other side of that. You look at like Jurgen Klopp. What he's just nipped out. Nagelsmann as well. He's still very young. I don't really know what sort of career he had, but he was never anything notable. And I'm not sure how good Bielsa was, but he's been named as one of the top coaches in Europe, and I can't remember him ever having an incredible career. Maybe Pochettino goes into the good player, good manager sort of mold. But yeah, if you just take the short list that they've brought out for the best coach in Europe, I think it is very much 50-50. I don't think you have to be a good player at all to be a good manager, but maybe sometimes that weighs down as a burden, doesn't it? The pressure of being a good player, you're expected to be a good manager, and that's why a lot of them don't succeed.
Yeah, you look at Sir Alex. That's a prime example there. He played for Rangers, which is never good, and wasn't a very good player. But actually, this is completely off United, but still on football. Would Barry? Because I have to say, while you're here, I pick your brain on this. Is the greatest ever player to go into management and be a success? Would you say that's Di Stefano?
Sorry, Joe, I didn't hear that at all. I beg your pardon.
The greatest ever player that was a great manager as well. Oh, actually, change what I said before. Would you say Johan Cruyff?
Oh, he's got to be. Yeah, I think we've got to. Yeah, definitely. I can't. Yeah. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody better. Great player, great manager. Yeah.
Yeah, Beckenbauer as well. Obviously, he won a World Cup and managed a team to a World Cup, being a central figure. That's great. Jacob, I see you're saying Deschamps. I would say Deschamps wasn't that great of a player. He's a very good player, but he wasn't. He was a better captain and a better leader. But
the shout out of Beckenbauer is a very good one. That's a very good point. Yeah.
I had that, and for you, James, who would you say is the best manager to go into, best player to go into management and be a success?
I don't think you can look further than Beckenbauer, can you? You know, he was arguably the best centre back in history, and then he went on to win a World Cup with Germany as a manager as well as a player. So, you know, we talk about doing it on both fronts. To win the World Cup as a player and a manager. Is he the only person to ever do it, or no? Or did
Deschamps?
Yeah, Deschamps did it as well. Yeah,
Brazil's manager did it as well. I can't remember. I think he won it. The manager who won it in '94. I think he won the World Cup with them as a player too, but he wasn't an important player.
But yeah, like, you know, Beckenbauer sort of invented that sweeper role, didn't he? He reinvented it anyway, and he's had such a huge impact on football. He's, like I said, he's arguably the best. If he's definitely one of the best centre backs that ever lived, and then went on to become one of the best managers of all time as well in terms of success. So, yeah, another comment of Zidane. But I think if we're talking about longevity, Beckenbauer across his whole managerial career, I think was still doing it. But yeah, Zidane's definitely a good shout as well.
I think as well with Zidane, it's hard to look past the 3 Champions Leagues in a row and stuff like that. And obviously, he was one of the greatest players to ever lived. But I think it's always with a manager that's still young and still maybe in their prime as management. I think you have to wait and adjust your opinion after they retire. That's my thoughts on that. And of course, it goes without saying that Solskjaer is going to beat them all. He's going to win the Champions League for us, the player. He's going to win it for us 5 times as a manager. So we can only look forward to that in the future. But guys, we're going to call it a day there. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Follow the guys on all their Twitters and stuff like that. Make sure to check us out. We'll have a preview, a post-match reaction of the PSG game, which we're definitely going to win tomorrow night. Then the women's talk will be on Thursday. We'll have a preview at some point during the week as well for the West Ham game. We'll have a post-show reaction on Saturday. Myself and Ben will be back for our lock-in on Friday evening at 10 o'clock. Make sure to be there for that. Make sure to be back for Sunday night, 10 o'clock for Wall of Reds. And for everything that can happen, make sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Just search for All for United. Make sure to search for all the boys here, as I said here before. And I look forward to seeing you the next time I see you. And I never, ever cue up my outro when I'm in the middle of a good closing. And here it is now. Thank you so much, guys. It's been a pleasure. See you.
Thanks, Joe.